I will share my screen. I hope everyone can see my screen at this moment. So today we have 3 sessions. This morning we have this session about integrating distributed energy resources, and afternoon we have 2 more sessions about innovation strategy discussion and the startup pitch session, and then the system inertia providers and grid forming inverters. Tomorrow we have 2 more sessions, and the same next Thursday. So this is the plan for this week, our workshop, Happy European Workshop Week. Feel free to join to the sessions and to bring your thoughts and your expertise to our sessions. So this is what we have for this week. Today, as I said to you before, our session is about integrating distributed energy resources. As you know, the integration, the DER integration is a hot topic for power systems community. So today we'll have, I would say that this session has 4 parts. The first part will address the Onenet project, one of the biggest European projects addressing the DSO customer interactions. In this part, we have Griffin. I'm sorry if I'm not saying correctly your name, but we have an introduction to the Onenet project, the outcomes from the work and services, products and market design for a harmonized European electricity market, and the upcoming challenges that will be addressed by this project. In the second part, we have another European project, Universal, I would say with a different perspective, more DSO oriented. So this is great to see what distribution utilities are developing, what type of use cases and pilots they are developing to use the flexibility provided by DER. So we have an introduction to the Universal project by Pedro Marques, the project coordinator of the project, and then we have the presentation from the 3 pilots in the project, the genuine pilot with the use case for active power in the context of the redispatch 2.0, the Portuguese pilot, use case and on-planned maintenance action in medium voltage grids, and a brief reference to grid planning through market mechanisms, presented by Rita Lopes Mourão from Redes, the Portuguese distribution system operator, and then the Polish pilot with the dynamic line rating and the flex station, presented by Adam Bebs from Institute of Power Engineering, Research Institute in Poland, and Miroslav from Energa Operator, the DSO in Poland. And then we have presentation from Professor Andrew Keane from University College of Dublin, presenting the UCD Energy Institute and the Nexus initiative. And finally, I will give you a brief overview about what HEPRI is developing related to the FERC, which addresses the integration of the distributed resources into the wholesale markets. I will provide you the main takeaways from the phase 1 of this project, and the next step, how we can support the distribution utilities to become effective distribution system operators for DER integration. So this is the plan for today. You can use, during the presentations, you can use the chat to ask questions, or after the presentations, you can unmute yourself and ask directly to the speaker. So I think we can start. Robin, I don't know if you have some recommendations, or otherwise we can start.
I just want to mention that we are recording today's session. Your continued participation in the session provides your consent to be recorded. If you prefer not to be recorded, you can send your questions directly to us via the chat feature, or you can also email Mario directly with your questions, and we'll make sure that we get those answered for you. You'll find all of your WebEx controls at the bottom of your screen. The chat window is very important to stay engaged. You may also mute and unmute yourself. We did mute you upon entry, but if you've got questions that need to be asked verbally or comments you would like to add, feel free to unmute yourself and provide that information for us as needed. If you guys have any questions, be sure to let us know. Enjoy your session today. Mario, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Robin. So I think we can start. Gwen, I think we can share your screen and start the presentation about the Onenet project.
All right.
And again, apologize if I'm not saying correctly your name.
No, it's fine. It's a
Okay,
difficult
okay.
name. Right. So good. Can you see my screen?
Yes, you can
Yes.
start.
Okay, perfect. So good morning, everyone. My name is Gwen Willems. I work at Vito Energyville. Vito is a research institute, and we do research into many aspects of sustainable development. One of these aspects is energy. And in my team, we work on, we do research on energy markets. Right now, it's mostly electricity markets because those are most developed. So we do different research, different European projects, research projects, also contract research. And today I will present the work that we and the other partners have done in the Onenet project, and more specifically the work on services, products and market design for a harmonized European electricity market. So a little bit the outline of my talk. I will give a brief introduction into Onenet. Then I will talk about the work that we have done on products and services, followed by the work we have done and are still doing on market design. And then I will briefly mention the upcoming work or the work that we have already started but are still developing. So we start with the general introduction. We just recently published this Onenet video. It is on YouTube. I can try. Mario suggested that I try to play it for you. Now I have bad experience with sharing videos online, but I will try. I'm not sure if it will work. Otherwise, in any case, I have included the link here on the screen so you can watch it later on. Okay, so let's go for it. And if you don't hear the sound, then yeah, just let me know.
In a fast-moving world challenged by climate change, the electricity sector plays a key role in reaching a decarbonized, sustainable, and smart future. What will the European electricity system look like? Try to imagine a new generation of grid services able to fully exploit demand response, storage, and distributed generation. Try to imagine citizens at the center of the energy transition, unlocking existing and new solutions to create fair, transparent, and open conditions for the consumer. Try to imagine One Network for Europe is a system of systems approach to the European electricity system, supported by a unique IT architecture. We are building this future. Onenet is the largest Horizon 2020 research project in the field of TSO/DSO consumer market integration, involving an unprecedented number of partners and countries. To create new synergies and new levels of cooperation among the relevant European stakeholders, Onenet is launching Griffin, a European grid forum that will let Onenet solutions fly. Onenet, One Network for Europe.
Okay, let's try to now get back to the out of this screen. Not sure why it's not working. There it is. Okay. So that was our video. We will now continue with the presentation, where I will go a bit further into detail what it is that Onenet is doing. So yeah, the vision or the goal behind Onenet is that, or the idea behind it is that we are now going from a fully centralized electricity system to a highly decentralized system, and that grid operators, system operators, yeah, they have to adapt to this changing environment, and they have to adjust their business models, also to incorporate more flexibility. And so that is a challenge. And so Onenet is there to think of solutions. So what is the vision? It is to create a fully replicable and scalable architecture that enables the whole European electrical system to operate as a single system, in which a variety of markets allows for the universal participation of stakeholders regardless of their physical location. All right, so I know that's still very general, so we will try to get a bit more into the details. Onenet consists of 3 pillars. So the first one is the definition of a common market design for Europe, where we will look or develop standardized products and key parameters for grid services to aim at the coordination of all stakeholders. So system operators, transmission or distribution, flexibility service providers, but also consumers. And then the second pillar is the definition of a common IT architecture and common IT interfaces. So here the idea is not to have one single platform for everybody, but to have an open architecture that allows several platforms to connect, and this way also allow access for all the stakeholders. And then the third pillar is the verification of the proposed solutions in large field tests. So this is by means of demo. I will go a bit more into detail on that. So in the presentation, just to make it clear, I will focus on the work that we are doing in the definition of this common market design. And then, as I already mentioned, so we have a wide set of demonstrators. They are grouped into 4 clusters. We have the Northern cluster, Eastern cluster, Southern cluster, and Western cluster. And so in each cluster, we have multiple DSOs and TSOs that are involved there to come up with innovative designs. And there we can also test these new market concepts that we develop in real life. This was already shown in the video, but so it's a Horizon 2020 project, and it's a European consortium. We have more than 40 partners. In there we have ETSO, NSOE, also numerous TSOs and DSOs, IT companies, and research institutes. And the EU contribution was 22 million out of this total of 28. And then one more unique feature of the Onenet project is that we have the Griffin. And Griffin is a kind of platform where we interact not only with stakeholders within the project, but also stakeholders without the project. So we can show them what we are doing, and then they provide us feedback. So we have this really, this interaction in 2 ways. So we think that's also very important to take into account the opinion of people external to the project. All right, so that was it for the general introduction. Now I will talk a bit more about the work that we did on products and services. I've also put here on the slide the link to the public deliverable of the work. So it's deliverable 2.2, the work that we have done, and that I will just show brief a summary of what we have done. So the objectives of the work on products and services, which go broader than what I will present here. So we have 6 objectives. So we will analyze, or we have analyzed in detail, best practices from existing markets and platforms. We will define standard products in the TSO-DSO consumer value chains, address various differences in national electricity markets, also think of new products to increase the availability of flexibility and setting up business use cases. And that then will all lead to recommendations related to system needs, system services, and product design. So what we have done in this deliverable is that we have developed a framework for harmonized products. And this goes, so we have then identified 5 different steps. So the first step is when you want to develop a new product, you have to think of the need. What is the need that you have? What will you use the product for? And then once you have identified that need, you have to think of the relevant attributes for that product. And to make that a bit more concrete, I have listed here a framework for products. So we have based it on the work of other authors, but this kind of shows all the different attributes that a product can have. This can go from, for instance, is it a capacity and energy product or both? Do we need to include locational information? What is the full activation time that is needed? What is the duration of the delivery period? What kind of communication mode is needed between the system operator and the flexibility service provider? Then also, what is the minimum quantity that you need for this product? How many megawatts do you need? Can you divide it or not? What is the maximum and the minimum price? Can you aggregate it? What is the baseline methodology? Is there a penalty if you cannot deliver? So these types of attributes, so that is what we're thinking of. So of the whole list, when you have identified the need, you have to think of what here of all these attributes is relevant for my product. And then you have to think if you want to harmonize that product. And just to be clear, with a harmonized product, we mean a product with some degree of convergence, products with some degree of convergence, but there is still a margin for differences. And then if you talk about a standardized product, this means that the products are fully harmonized. So they have all the same attributes and these attributes have the same values. So when you think of the benefits and barriers to harmonization, for instance, if you have a frequency product, a balancing product, then it's interesting to harmonize it because then you can use it cross-border. And it's what we already have right now in the Picasso and the Mari and the Terre platform. So these products are harmonized. But for instance, on the other hand, if you have more a locational product for a DSO, congestion management or voltage control, maybe it's not so important to harmonize it because you will not be able to exchange that product in between the different areas. So that's also something then you have to think about. And what do you as an SO want to harmonize, and what are the benefits and barriers associated with that? And then finally, once you have come up with that list, you have to give values to the different product attributes that you have identified. So for these attributes, or at least the ones that you have selected, you have to put values on there. And also, again, here, if you have a harmonized product, you can harmonize the attributes of the product. So make sure that you have, for the product that you want to exchange, that you have the same attributes, but you can also go a step further and harmonize or standardize the values that you attribute to these attributes. Then I talked a bit in the previous slide about the need that the SO has. So this is then a framework that we developed for system services, which kind of shows the different needs that we identified in the project. So there are 5: adequacy, frequency control, congestion management, black start, and voltage control. And then we map them according to the time frame. So this could be an operational time frame, short term or longer term. And then based on this mapping, we identified several products. So either these are already existing products like FCR, MFR, or some other products for congestion management and voltage control that currently do not exist yet. So that is then the framework that we came up with. And then also we decided to focus within Onenet on frequency control, congestion management, and voltage control. And then taking these two previous slides together, so the product harmonization framework and the framework for system services, we developed a list of proposed harmonized products. So we have divided them into two groups, the non-locational or frequency products and the locational products. So the non-locational products, they, I guess, are all familiar to you, the FFR, FCR, AFR, MFR, and RR. So they already exist and there are European platforms for these products. And then the locational products, they are divided into a corrective and a predictive product. So a corrective is really near the time of near real time, while a predictive product has a more longer term horizon where you, for instance, if you know that you will do some maintenance works and you know that you will need a product here. And then you can also have an active or a reactive product. And then from this list, so these products are also the products that they are using in the demos. So we had this interaction and workshop also with the demos to make sure that we're all on the same page. So these are the products that are being used by the demos. And then finally, we were also thinking about, the potential evolution of product design. Where could it go? And this was also something that was taken from the EU SysFlex project, but we took it a bit further. So we see here two extremes, the supermarket approach and the super product approach. So the supermarket approach is an approach where the SOs, they have the full responsibility to identify the best FSP for their needs at each point in time. So that means that each FSP can put in, the offers, like what can I offer you? This is my reaction time. This is my duration time. So there are all these products, and then the SO has to pick one. It's being in a supermarket and you have to pick the product. While the super product approach is that FSPs, they aggregate all their resources and they just into one product, and then they tell the SO, this is what my product can do. And then the idea is that the SO can use this product to address all its needs. But of course, these are the two extremes. So there's also a number of hybrid options in between that we identified. So this is the work that we did on products and services. And then we will now move to the work on market design. So again, here I refer to the deliverable that is already publicly available on an overview of market designs for procurement of system services. And again, we identified 5 objectives in this work on market design. So I will not, again, address all of them. So first, we define a theoretical market framework for innovative market design options that is based on previous and ongoing projects. We make sure that there is an alignment between the developed concepts of market design, regulation, and demonstrations in the project. So it's this kind of interaction. Then we analyze potential market distortions and inefficiencies that could arise in integrated markets, because of course that's where we want to go. We want to go to this integrated market, or at least develop a concept for that. Then another objective is to design integrated markets to procure these products for system services. And then, the main goal is to design efficient, integrated, and scalable markets for the procurement of system services by DSOs, TSOs, with a seamless coordination within and cross countries, and also coordination between all of the stakeholders. So not only the system operators, but flexibility service providers and consumers. So the first step was to develop a theoretical market framework. I have to say that this framework, it focuses only on system services. So system services where the TSO and the DSO are the primary buyers, and it also only focuses on market-based mechanisms. So we did not include here, for instance, dynamic retailers. So only market-based mechanisms. And the idea or the goal of this framework is twofold. You can use it as a descriptive and a prescriptive tool. So the descriptive tool is, idea here is that when you have an existing market, you can use this framework to describe the market. So it gives you all the different options that are present in a market, and then you can use this to describe the market. And then the prescriptive tool, this you can use if you want to develop a new flexibility market, and maybe you want to integrate it with an existing market. And then you can use this framework to have an idea of all the things that you have to think about. So the framework consists of 5 pillars. And the first 2 pillars, they set up the structure of the entire market architecture. So an entire market architecture can consist of different sub-markets. So for instance, you could have an MFRR and an AFRR submarket, or you could have an MFRR and a congestion management submarket. And then these 2 markets and the interaction, or these 2 submarkets and the interaction between them, that then makes up your market architecture. So here you have to think about which submarkets will you have, which products and services will you offer, where will this market take place, and what are the roles and the actors. And then the submarket coordination pillar, it talks about the coordination between the submarkets and how the flexibility that is available, how it is allocated between these 2 submarkets, and when the coordination takes place. And then these last 3 pillars, they kind of describe the dimensions of the market clearing. So the first one, the market optimization. Here you look at the market optimization methodology. So when you have 2 or more submarkets, will you optimize them centrally, decentralized? Is there a kind of distributed mechanism? And then the submarket optimization strategy, this looks at, if you have, again, these 2 different submarkets, do you optimize them simultaneously, so together, or maybe at the same time but separate, or do you do it in a sequential way? And then the market optimization objective, what are you optimizing? Are you maximizing social welfare? Are you minimizing costs? So that's a bit this market optimization pillar. And then you have the market operation. So here the remuneration scheme refers to, is it a pay as bid or a pay as clear market? Then the remuneration of the product attribute refers to, is it a capacity product? Is it an energy product? Is it both? The market clearing type is it a discrete market or a continuous market? And procurement frequency, how often do you run the market? And then finally, we have the grid constraints representation. So the methodology, is it just very basic? Do you just look at simple bits? Or for instance, do you take the whole grid into account when you optimize? And then the second attribute or feature here is when do you include them? So in which phase of the market? Is it in the pre-qualification? Is it in the procurement phase, in the activation, in the settlement? Maybe there are several where you take it into account, maybe all. So that is what is included in the market framework that we developed with the partners. And then once we had this market framework, we applied it to the different demos in the different clusters. And we kind of distilled 3 types of coordination based on the market framework and what we saw were the market structures or setups in the demos. So the first one is market-based TSO-DSO coordination. So here you have the TSO and the DSO that are coordinating or interacting with each other in the market. So they're also using this market architecture to allocate flexibility between the 2 of them. So that's the first type. And then the second type is market-based DSO coordination. So here we only have DSOs and they are using a market. So here we also, or at least in these demos, the TSO did not have access to the resources from the distribution grid. So this was only DSO and market architecture. And then the third option that we saw was a technical TSO-DSO coordination. So here the TSO and the DSO, they do coordinate, but they do not do it through a market. They have other setups. So they exchange information and then they exchange requests for operating actions, but they use technical procedures, for instance, interactions between control centers and platforms. So those are the three options that we found. And then we took it one step further and we also mapped these demos on the different market models that were developed in the Onenet project. So you see here the mapping of the different demos according into the time from long-term to near real-time. And then the y-axis shows you the level of TSO-DSO interaction. So you have this fragmented market model where you have technical-based TSO-DSO coordination. There is also no real market interaction, as I already said, between the TSO and the DSO. And then the more you go up, for instance, a common market model, as is present in Greece or in the Northern demonstrator, here you have really one common market, the DSO and the TSO or other market operators involved. They are all together in one market, one optimization. So that is a bit the work that we did with regard to the market design based on the theoretical framework. Now, when we did this mapping of the demos on the framework, we also identified some challenges that were there with regard to market integration and coordination. And that then comes, or that leads us to the last step in this project, or at least the work that we are doing right now. So we want to improve European electricity markets. We want to make sure they're more coordinated and more integrated, but that comes, of course, with challenges. So here you see a picture of the challenges that we have identified so far based on this mapping between the framework and the demos. So if you go to or think about market architecture, every decision that you make there can have an impact on your market liquidity and competition. If you, for instance, the temporal and spatial dimension, if your markets are not taking place at the same time, then you might lock out flexibility out of one market. Or if the spatial dimension is not the same, there could also be some challenges to integrate the markets. Product standardization, for instance, can also be a barrier or a challenge. If you standardize a product too much, it's possible that in some regions you will not have enough liquidity because you simply will not have enough flexibility service providers who can provide that product. So in that case, it might be better to not really standardize a product. So those are things that you have to take into account when you develop your market architecture and you think about product harmonization or standardization. And then, so coming back to the second pillar of the framework and the challenges associated with that, when you devise a time sequence for your different submarkets, you have to think of a way to do that avoids like a conflictive overlapping and that makes room for gaming. So yeah, you have to make sure or at least try to avoid these situations. The same challenges apply when you think about bit forwarding between one market and another and resource allocation. So you can coordinate your market phases to increase efficiency. And for instance, you can do this with this flexibility register. And then other challenges, for instance, related to market optimization. So if you want to have an overall economic efficiency, you have to activate the FSPs considering the effect on the overall system operation cost. So for instance, you have to keep in mind that if you activate an FSP to manage congestion, it's possible that you create an imbalance, and that solving that imbalance will cost you even more. So, for instance, that's an example of things you have to think about. You also have, again, challenges with allocation of flexibility or coordination of the timing and the timing of the different markets and the information that you exchange, and take into account that there is always this risk of gaming. And then for the third pillar, the market operation. So you have to keep into mind the effectiveness of your remuneration scheme, the pay as bid or the pay as clear. Also, if you want to have a capacity or an energy or both, I mean, depending on the specific situation that you are in, you could lock out or reduce the liquidity of your market by choosing one of these options. Also, the timing of the procurement is important. In some cases, it's, for instance, it could be that SOs prefer to have a closer to reality, closer to real-time procurement, because that at that time they have a better view of the situation in the grid, while at the same time, for instance, FSPs might prefer to have a longer-term markets, because that allows them to better plan their resources. Or it could be the opposite, where the system operator, because they're planning to do some maintenance, they want to do a procurement that's more long-term, while the FSP prefers, or it would be better for the FSP to have a more close to real-time procurement. So those are a number of challenges that we identified. Also, the grid representation, how you do it and when you do it, that could also cause some barriers. For instance, if you want to include your whole grid, there might be some computational difficulties there to calculate your power flow distribution. There might also be some challenges related to cybersecurity and data exchange. So those are all things to keep in mind. Where are we now? So there is this need for coordinated markets. We have done this gap analysis of what is missing to move from markets in isolation to fully integrated markets. Based on the work with the framework and the demos, we have identified some barriers, and we are now mapping them onto the various aspects of integration. So integration between services, MFRR, congestion management, integration between system operators, congestion management for the TSO and the DSO, cross-border, for instance, these MARI platforms, integration over timeframes. So we are now doing this mapping exercise to see which barriers are important for which aspects of integration. And the idea then is, and then we will also take into account the different standard products that we have identified, also doing the same exercise, which barriers are important, which aspects of integration are important when you think of these different products, if you want to standardize them. Do you want to standardize them? And then finally, we will come to this integrated and scalable market concepts, where we go from a concept where you have no integration at all to fully integrated markets, and then we will identify some hybrid options in between. So these will then be concepts. It will be a little bit similar. That's what we want to do to these different market models, for instance, from Coordinet and SmartNet. And then based on that, we will issue recommendations for integrated and coordinated markets. Again, based on this interaction between the concepts that we have developed, the demos and modeling. So that is where we plan to go in the coming months. Thank you very much for listening. And if you have any more questions, or if you want to go to the Onenet website, you can just scan the QR code. Or if you have specific questions for me, you can always send me an email. Thank you.
Thanks, Griffin. A great presentation. So now we have some time for questions. We have a first question in chat from Pedro Benedito. I don't know, Pedro, if you prefer, you can unmute yourself and ask directly to Gwen. Otherwise, Gwen can answer to your question.
Yes, hi. Good morning. Thank you for the talk. I just wanted to ask you, where does this euphemia algorithm, which today, according to what I understand, clears the day-ahead market at the European Union level, where does it fit within the scheme of products that the Onenet project considers?
So, okay, the euphemia algorithm is an algorithm to clear the day-ahead markets. So, so that's not the products that you then have are the orders on the day-ahead market. You have the simple orders or the complex orders. So where does it fit? Actually, in the northern demo, they have this. They're going to integrate the service market with the, I think is the intraday. I don't think it's the day ahead. So they're looking at ways of integrating that. So yeah, where does it fit? We will think of ways how to integrate these markets, but I don't think that, at least for now, I don't see that we will integrate the algorithms, but it will probably be more a sort of bit forwarding from these service markets to the day ahead market. So bits that, for instance, were not accepted in the MFRR market or other reserve markets can then be forwarded to the day ahead markets or the intraday markets. Yeah, that is how I see it. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does. Thank you.
I don't know if anyone has questions about the Onenet project. I have two questions given.
Yes.
You talked about the supermarket approach and super product approach.
Yeah.
What type of approach the demos in Onenet are using to design the business use cases?
I don't think any of them are using the supermarket or the super product approach, because that's really quite extreme, and it's just like a wild idea or a vision of the future. They are using different products. I mean, it's such a diverse community, really. So they are using these the standard products that I have shown on in the slides. Where are they? But I don't know by heart. I don't know by heart which demo is using which product. So that's this one. So, or some are using might be using a combination. But yeah, so the DSOs are using some of these products then.
Okay, and my second question is,
yeah,
what do you mean by the fragmented market? I think in a demo cluster you have something about fragmented market.
Yeah. So those are the market models in Onenet. I also
Yeah.
So the
Yes.
I guess I wrote it down just to make sure that I would have the right definition. So in the fragmented market model, there is an optimal integration of the flexibility markets in the existing electricity market structure. In the existing electricity markets, and it is achieved if the flexible resources are efficiently located. Oh no, that's not the explanation. That's not the right explanation. So the fragmented market model is where you have a DSO and TSO coordination, but there is no, the TSO does not have access to the resources at the DSO level. So the markets are really fragmented.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think we don't have more questions.
Okay.
One more time, thank you.
Yes.
For the great presentation
Welcome.
about the Onenet.
I'll try to stop sharing the screen, but somehow, there it is. Yes. All right.
Okay, thank you. So now it's time to the next presentation, the next project, Universal Project. I will give the floor to Peter Marks to present the project, and then we have the presentation about the three demonstrators in the Universal Project. So go ahead, Peter.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I think you're seeing my screen right now.
Yes.
Okay, great. So let me speak quickly on just an introduction of the project, and then I'll hand it over to the specialists, the three demos responsibles, and they'll explain in more detail what's in the business use cases. So Universal Project is a project with DSOs and market agents. So it's not it's just a DSO model. So it's focused on the market, the DSO, and of course the customer. I'm not able to present in. I think WebEx has problem. I have problems with WebEx in presenting in standard mode, but you're seeing the presentation, right? So what we have, the DSOs acting as system managers, prosumers, as I said, also aggregators and market platforms. All this around the concept that we're bringing, that's a universal market enabling interface, which means that it's a standard, a future proposal of a future standard for switching information between all these agents. I'll explain it better. The consortium involves 19 partners from 8 countries. We have 3 DSOs, including linked third parties of E.ON, Midnet Strom, one of them, and it's one represented here by David. Redes, represented here by Rita, Energa, represented here by Miroslav. Then 2 market platforms, real market platforms, and Centrica as an aggregator. Research institutes, including IEN, this Institute Energetic. Adam Babs works there, and he'll be the one of the ones that will present. He'll present specifically DLR. What's the UMA? Some of you already know it's an interface, it's modular, it tries to be agnostic, it tries to become a future standard for connection between all interest parties in market environment flexibility activation. So in the project, we're using the linear line. So we're connecting the DSO with market platforms and aggregators. In the future, hopefully, we'll have moved into the dashed line and include direct connection to both consumers or prosumers, or even the DSO, who knows. It's focused on a REST API, so it's very simple, very straightforward, as open as possible to include any implementation of market platform that we may think of, and of course it's evolutive. It will become public, and it will be available for anyone to develop over it or test it. As I said, it connects DSO with market agents. But also in the project, we have, for the DSO sake, some developed tools, grid tools, OPFs, state estimators, forecasting, and all that. And so we're trying to do the whole circuit, help the DSO activating the flexibility through market approach. As I said, the UMI specification will become public next July. Around the UMI, so what we have, what I said, the tools, also again market mechanisms as in Onenet, and so going into the tools I already explained, network observability, prediction of loads and consumption. One interesting thing, it's the coordinated control between grid voltage levels, meaning between medium and low voltage in the Portuguese demo. And some new ideas of including flexibility to improve resilience and self-healing, and also into a planning issue, so optimize planning while using flexibility. Regarding the markets, we're demonstrating market through market platforms, but we're also studying with simulations dynamic tariffs and peer-to-peer. So coming to what we're going to talk about, focus on the DSO needs. This is a rough scheme of what table of what we've reached. We have the classical ones: physical congestion, voltage control, and phase balancing. But then we introduce, as I said, support to network planning, support to unplanned and planned operations, and to extreme events and islanding. These two will be done in simulation mode and not real environment, as you would imagine. So the business use cases are all here. We have quite a lot of them with this distribution. In just a comment, the planning will test weeks ahead, but in fact, in the future, when we use it, will be years ahead. So we'll talk about not the standard ones, but the specific ones that I think will bring more value to the discussion. And we brought this. So what are we bringing? Flexibility marketing in German demo using active power related to redispatch 2.0. David Bruman is from Mitnet Strom is going to talk about it. Then Rita will speak about the flexibility use both for planned operations and unplanned operations, and also for planning, grid planning. Mario is for sure aware of this use case. He has his hands on it some time before. Then Miroslav will speak about this flex station we have. This is not within the flexibility market. It's a bilateral contract. And I think I switched this. Yeah. And then Adam will speak about DLR. And so, shutting myself up down, I'll hand it over to David, who will speak about the German use case. Go ahead, David.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is David. I hope you can now all hear me and see me. I work in the German DSO Midnight Strom, which is part of the E.ON concern. And
David, the buttons are switched. The left and right button.
Okay, I hope. Yeah, that seems to work. Okay, if not, you must support me, Pedro. So if you look on the picture and in the background, you can slightly see where our grid area is located. And you can also see the partners that are involved in our use case of or the demonstration, the German demonstration itself in the Universal project. So you see we have also a variety of knowledge providers involved, and you can also see what is our use case all about. This is the combination of active power flexibility provided through a market platform, and while also being compatible with mandatory process redispatch or redispatch 2.0 as it is in place in Germany. Now, naturally, there comes the question, what is redispatch 2.0? And here you can see the key points. So redispatch 2.0 is a schedule-based congestion management process. It is mandatory by law and it is active. Just last year we started in October, and the goal is to make congestion management for the whole system cheaper, so minimize the cost for congestion actions, and as said, mandatory for all the system operators and all generation units that have an installed capacity of 100 kilowatts or more. So how is this done? We will see in a few moments in detail, but in general, we try to minimize the cost by establishing iterative communication and power flow calculations at different system operators to minimize the costs. We can start with an example on the next slide, a simplified one. Pedro, maybe there it is. Maybe you can help me out on slide 16.
The control is yours. You want me to?
Yeah, but it doesn't really
Okay, I'll do it.
work out. So I try, but maybe you need to help sometimes. So, and here you see the simplified example. So we have a mesh grid, as is normally the case in Germany, 110 kV, which is in Germany also part of the DSO. And of course, we have connections, transformers to the TSO level, but we have also downstream units and also downstream DSOs, as is it also typical in Germany. You maybe know we have quite a lot of them, up to almost 900. So this is a really typical scenario in Germany. And for our grid region, normally we have a congestion if we have a good sunny weather and we have high wind, so that the feed-in of the renewables is really low, really high. And on the next slide, you see how it begins. So basically, the whole process starts with resembling all the data that you have. So this means from the conventional power plants, we get the schedule, how it is planned for the next 36 hours, and we have a prognosis for all the renewables, wind and solar, basically. So, and by evaluating this in the process, we see, okay, we have a problem, we have a bottleneck, a congestion on this line, and we need to solve it. And in the end, of course, our goal is to bring it back to a situation we can cope with, near to 100% or below in a N-1 case. So how it is done now in detail. Therefore, we start, as already showed a few slides ago, with assembling all the data. We get a day ahead forecast of PV, of wind, of basically all renewables, and also forecast for all the power plants connected to our grid. Then we do an internal process as the DSO. We do a grid state estimation, power flow calculation, optimization, and in the end, we know, okay, how is the power flow in our grid, and we also know the headroom that we could provide for congestions that the TSO may have. And the same does the TSO and calculates its grid state and, okay, identifies the needs. And then there's a communication, and maybe there's a difference, so that the TSO needs more flexibility and or also less, and the DSO can provide it. And then there is this iterative communication, so that they can, by doing the same process and optimizing it several times, come close to each other or match in the end each other. And therefore we have a calculation each hour, so that in the end we make sure that it all works. And we can also react on something. If a prognosis, for example, changes a bit because we come closer to real time, we can react on it. Or if there is another congestion, by doing it iteratively, we know and assure that we have a stable grid in the end. And this is, of course, not only done between DSO and TSO, it is also done between the DSO and the downstream DSOs that are connected to this one. Typically, example is a public utility in one of the bigger cities that is connected to a DSO. And then, of course, we have the connection to the TSO. And the TSOs itself, they, of course, try to optimize their grid also with an European exchange. So in the end, we have a cascaded process from the lower DSO levels to the higher ones, to the TSO, and in the end, an optimal grid by establishing iterative communication and providing schedules and prognosis on a regular basis. And we now, in our use case, try to use this framework and translate it to our needs. So in eUniversal, was already mentioned, we are more focused on the DSO itself. So we have not the communication, or not primarily the communication in mind between DSOs and TSOs. We care about, okay, how to do the congestion management best for our purposes. And so we translated it from different roles, DSO, TSO, to different grid levels. And the focus is to first solve the lowest grid level, so that we know, okay, we have a congestion-free grid there. Then we carry on and use the headroom for the medium voltage level, and then so on to the high voltage level, extra high voltage level. You can continue this process in theory. But we will focus on low voltage and the capacity for medium voltage in eUniversal. Another difference is we have a market platform. This is not needed in the high voltage or the bigger wind farms. You can almost count them in the grid. We have like something around 100. You are capable to communicate with them as a human. But in low voltage grids, if we have 15,000 and more low voltage grids, and we have a lot of resources connected there, so we enable it with aggregation and then the offers on the market platform. This is also something that changed. And with the UMEI connected and developed in eUniversal, we are also enabled to communicate to different market platforms, so that we can also foster competition there. And if we look to the last slide I have prepared, here you can see how we do it also in detail. So first of all, of course, again, the data collection of base data, then also real-time measurements of smart meters, for example, and also measurements we provide for a universal state estimation optimization, so that we know, okay, how large must the measures we take for congestion management be, and then we can provide the flexibility request to the market, and hopefully we find a good solution. If not, we do this with the iterative cycle again, and yeah, we can also higher the frequency of measures if we come closer to real time, so that we in the end know that we have a secure and safe grid state. Yeah. So that's all from my side. You can of course ask questions, and afterwards I hand over to Rita. Thank you. If you have questions,
regain control. I don't know if Mario, you want the questions to be right now?
Yes, if anyone has
good.
some question about the German pilot, please feel free to unmute yourself or use the chat.
Hi, it's Carmen Rodriguez here from IEMO in Australia. I was wondering, how do you manage the big job of maintaining the models and like the topology and everything that you've got in the first box there, the base data collection?
Yeah, that is indeed a difficult task. So lucky we have already implemented our GIS system so that we can retrieve updates on a regular basis. So we have this interface if you want. And then, of course, here in the demonstration, we focus on just a few low voltage grids that make things easier so that we are aware of any changes. Of course, if you translate it into real operation, then it is a bit more difficult in terms of, okay, you need to be really sure that all the changes that you make in the grid are also in the model. And this will be a difficult task, but as it is right now, redispatch is only relevant for the high voltage grid, more or less. And there we have this connection with our SCADA system in place, so that we do everything we do in field is also virtualized and retrievable from our system.
Right, thanks. Just quick another question is, so do you use the full grid topology, or like is it a reduced grid like you showed in some of the slides higher up?
Yeah, in redispatch 2.0, it is a reduced grid, but it is also a bit different in I know that some DSO use the full grid. It depends on what your company decides, more or less how you communicate it with the TSO. You could do both. It is allowed that you do an equivalent grid, but you could also provide the full grid. And for the communication, for example, there we use the SIM model in high voltage.
Thanks.
So if anyone has more questions. I have a question, David, just a quick question. Which is the trigger to start the redispatch process? Did you receive information from the TSO that is necessary to redispatch the unities in the distribution level, and then you start the process in the DSO side?
The process is the wholesale market or the end of the wholesale market, and if we have traded capacities over lines that we cannot provide, then this is the trigger. And we are, as said, this is mandatory, so it's also, this is the reason, but the trigger is more or less it is the law. We are obliged to do that and to provide the forecast to first of all day ahead 2:30.
Okay, and in your case, are you testing solutions for, let's say, day ahead and intraday, right?
Yeah, we start day ahead, but it goes over to intraday, and more or less the only difference is if you come really close to real time, then the frequency is higher. So you exchange the data then quarterly hour based, and in the beginning it is just 1 hour.
Okay, thank you, David.
You're welcome.
So, Pedro, I think we can go to the Portuguese pilot with Rita.
Okay, let me regain control and give it. I'll just, Rita, let me just okay, let me just switch the mouse. I'm using a left-handed mouse, and it's you don't, so I'll put it.
Well, while you do it, I can start to introduce myself.
Yeah,
Good
go ahead.
morning.
The control is yours.
Okay, thank you. Well, my name is Rita. I work at Redes, the Portuguese DSO. We have high voltage, medium voltage, and the low voltage grid in Portugal. I work in the dispatch center, and I will present some specificities of the Portuguese pilot. David already spoke about the day ahead and the intraday market. Here I'm going to speak about the long-term markets, one for grid planning and the other one for maintenance, planned maintenance. Pedro, I don't think that the control is working. Sorry. Can you?
It's yours. You must go into the slides left in the left. Yeah.
Oh,
That's it.
okay.
I wasn't.
Okay.
I wasn't able. The PC started to be too stressed when I put it in presentation mode.
Okay, no problem. So first I will give you an overview of the Portuguese demonstrator. We will test 4 business use cases in 4 different locations. And to do that, we have enrolled 46 low voltage participants, 13 medium voltage participants, and 4 medium voltage producers. These are wind farms. Then we will count on with our partners 2 market platforms, Nside and Nodes, 1 flexibility aggregator, and then we will use as a DSO the tools developed by NG Impact and Inesc. They developed 7 tools that we will test during this demonstrator. The 2 business use cases that I'm going to talk about are contracting flexibility services for avoiding voltage and or congestion issues during planned maintenance sections in medium voltage grid, where we'll test the service for congestion management and voltage control. And then I also make a reference to the 4th business use case, which is congestion management for medium and long-term grid planning through market mechanisms, where we'll test the service for predictive congestion management. Okay. First, when we think about the daily life in a dispatch, we always think about outage management. But one of the activities that takes most of our time is planned maintenance actions. Just for reference, the monthly average in Portugal for planned maintenance is 1,500 each month for internal requests, and then for external requests like medium voltage clients or producers, we have more or less 250 requests per month. Why do we do maintenance? You all know, but I can say, well, it's to replace aged assets, to add new clients to the grid, to install remote control equipment, and all of these requires some actions in the dispatch center, and most of the times requires grid reconfiguration. I have there an example of what would happen if we wanted to make this portion of a medium voltage line de-energized to change isolators, whatever we need to do. And this would entail some grid reconfiguration. So what could happen here? Well, we have here a wind farm that for sure would have is power flow inverted. Here, these clients that usually are fed by this substation would be fed by this substation. Well, they could have under voltage. Here in this section of the grid, we can have an overload. Well, it's hard and it's quite complex and to evaluate all the possible combinations manually in order for us to avoid all these problems that can come up during planned maintenance. So here we propose a method to explore all the network reconfiguration options, and then if that it isn't enough, to use flexibility to avoid all the identified constraints. Okay. So to do that, we have to establish a timeline with the market operators, with the two market operators that we are with whom we are working with. So it's the process to plan plan maintenance actions starts 3 weeks before the actual maintenance. So there we plan the maintenance, we identify grid constraints, and then we find the best solution. And if the solution requests flexibility, then we go to the market and we place there long-term flexibility requests. Then the FSPs, the flexibility service providers, have 1 week to answer the needs that we placed in the market. After they place the needs, we query their offers, and then we validate them and choose which one suits better our needs, which will then culminate in the reservation of flexibility. The matched cell bids from each market will be considered as reserved flexibility. The FSPs with matched cell bids then are obliged to submit cell offers in the short-term market with an accorded maximum price cap. And then in the day of the planned maintenance, these will be mixed up somehow with the short-term market, and then we will choose the best option. But this way, we assure that we have liquidity. If we don't have, and we will know in advance if we won't have liquidity and if we have to do the business as usual. So this is the market timeline, but then how did we assemble all these with the tools? The trigger is a maintenance operator that says, I want to make this asset unavailable. And then it's the process starts. The inputs that the tools are getting is the medium voltage forecast, both for load and production. Then, of course, the topology database, and then with some recurrence, the switch status is updated, and also the medium voltage readings from substations and secondary substations. Then we have a set of tools that will run in an organized way. We have the power flow tool and the network reconfiguration tool, where we try to find an optimal solution that minimizes the non-distributed energy for each potential maintenance period. Then, well, did we find a good solution just with grid reconfiguration? If yes, okay, this optimal plan goes right back to our maintenance operator. If no, we have to see if we need flexibility, and for that we have the medium voltage flexibility needs assessment. Then after we assess the flexibility that we need, we run the medium voltage flexibility scheduling tool, and then we compute the network constraints and sets of SOSPs that then will be sent through the UMI to the market platforms in order for the FSPs to see our needs and to reply to them. So this is what we assembled for the planned maintenance. Now I'm going to speak about what we assembled for the grid planning. So grid planning has some specific challenges, and some of them are quite new, and the method that we use now to plan our grid is traditional. So it's so what are the challenges? We have seasonal grid congestions. Some areas like right by the beach don't always have the same load. We have an increased distributed energy resources. We have to increase our hosting capacity for all the renewables that are getting in the grid. And then we have to host new types of loads, and quite of them are quite peculiar, like the electric vehicles that don't have like the behavior that we are used to, and we have to host them in our grid. So what do we want to answer with this business use case? Can we contract long-term flexibility service and consider them as an alternative to the traditional distribution grid investment solutions? Or should we can we postpone these investments because we are using flexibility? And then what is the economic effectiveness of such flexibility services when compared to with the traditional grid investments? We are trying something new. We don't know if it will be better, but then we will access the advantages of this approach. So for these business use case, we also set it up a timeline for the market. It is aligned with our grid maintenance plan, with our planning cycle. We choose 3 years in advance. Of course, that in the demonstrator, these years will be shrunk into weeks, but well, 3 years before, our planning engineers will look at will start their planning activities, where they will identify future constraints, and like what happened for the planned maintenance, they will identify the solution for these constraints, if the solution is flexibility, and then also will define a maximum price cap. This is really important. And then with all this information, they will place a long-term request in the market. Then we leave it open. The market stays open during 1 year so that FSPs can answer our requests. And then 1 year, 2 years before the predicted activation of the flexibility, we go to the market and we get the offers, we match them with our needs, and then we will choose the best ones using some criteria. And then the chosen flexibility offers are reserved. And so the FSPs will be paid for the reservation of the flexibility, and then they are also obliged to participate in the short-term market. So I will also present an overview of how is this assembled in the Portuguese pilot. So we have the consumption and production forecast, like we had in the planned maintenance, but here with a longer time frame. Then we also get the network topology, and then we have some inputs from the planning team, like the investment needs that our company and the strategy of the company, and then also the economic and financial indicators, like for example the expected electricity consumption growth. Then we run a set of tools that are orchestrated, like medium voltage power flow tool. We perform a DSO economic analysis, and then we run the medium voltage adequacy assessment, then a fragility driven assessment, and then finally we make the flexibility needs assessment, where the flexibility needed is quantified so that we can send it to the market through the UMA. Then 1 year later, we run all these tools again in order for us to choose if this is a good option to go. And with the final step, which is a multi-criteria decision analysis. And for that, we have 4 criteria, like the total cost of the solution, the active power losses, continuity of supply, and grid resilience. So this is all for the Portuguese demonstrator. Thank you.
Thanks, Rita. We are on time. I don't know if there is any question about Portuguese demonstrator. I think we don't have questions, so we can go to the Polish demo, Pedro, please. Thanks, Rita, for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mirosław Matusewicz from Energo Operator. Maybe to be easier, I will try to share my screen, Pedro, okay? So I will try to do it.
Okay, if you prefer.
Maybe it will be easier. Okay. Could you see my screen at this moment?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So about the Polish demo, we can Polish demo will be focused on all voltage levels. So it's the first steps for our system. For high voltage level in our demonstrator, we focus especially on the dynamic high rating, and it will be something different than typical flexibility, because we don't want to buy flexibility, but we want to offer flexibility source for the wind farms, especially on other producers who can produce more than typical agreement connection agreement. So in special weather conditions. So Adam will talk about this later. I will focus on the rest part of this presentation. For the medium voltage and some part of the voltage, we prepare, we call it AMS systems, advanced. It will be developed by Micronica, a partner in the consortium. And this system could allow us improvement of flexibility of the medium voltage network and of course low voltage network. And the next steps for this are special function in the system that connect grid state estimation, optimal power flow modules, and finding the congestions identification in the network, and the modules that will possess us to buy market flexibility from the different platforms, market platforms as a for flexibility provider, other flexibility providers for testing. Our partner is Nodes in this our demo, so we use contact with Nodes platform, and we try to use the UMEI interface to connect with this platform and to buy flexibility from sources, especially in our demo. We have the wind farms, we have the biogas plants, and the energy storage in the demo area, so they can offer us flexibility. It will be something standard, typical using in the demo, German demo and Portuguese demo. I think that's really similar use cases. So we don't focus on this because it was said earlier. And the next step is flexible substation. In the low voltage network, especially in the network that are really big performance of the PV installation, that will make really voltage problem, cause really voltage problems in the network. So we can, our problem for the solution for this is a flexible substation. It will be autonomous substation that we can control the voltage in the different parts of the network, control the transformer and the rest of the network, and maybe prepare the better weather conditions, especially voltage conditions in the network. I will focus on this station, how it will be constructed. Of course, in our demo, we will build 3 flexible substations. One is indoor flex stations and 2 pole flex stations. There are some similar, of course, elements. The most important part for all this substation is a transformer with OLTC and the controller for this, especially in this situation. And the most similar is the low voltage switchgear. This is what is not typical, that every field line feeder is equipped in the power network power analyzer, so we can control the voltage, the current in each feeder, and the other parameters, network parameters, harmonize it, everything what we can measure on this. So this is the common without of pole flex station and indoor flex station. Of course, indoor flex station, the next step is the medium voltage switchgear. Typical medium voltage switchgear with line base and transformer bay. But what's different, that each bay is equipped in a bay controller. Not one controller for all station, but each field exactly will be equipped by controller, and the connection with the central controller, that is the heart of the flex station, we use the IEC protocol 61850. So this will be the digital communication. And of course, the protocol is typical for the primary substation. Others, it's a new protocol, but it's used rather on this level. I think that could be first step to use this protocol on the secondary substation. So this is what we can try to use to change how it will be working on the medium voltage. And of course, the heart of the flex station is a central controller. And with this, I focus on the next slide. I will talk something about this. First of all, the central controller producer is IAN. It's our partner consortium. And what is the most important, few most important things? On the old substation, we use EMI system. EMI system with the data concentrator. It's in the of course the same place we built, and AMI we can connect with the meters of customers with the PLC protocols. So we can use the voltage deep in the network to know what's the voltage in the grid. We don't know it as typical way, but the AMI system connected with the AMI controller with the AMI systems. So it will be I think the timing would be not good if we ask the central system for the voltage of this meter. In our project, we use direct SIP communication between the central controller and data concentrator. So we can really almost real time. It will be not real time on the seconds, but maybe minutes. It's almost real time communication with the meters deep in the grid. We can ask the questions for the voltage on some part of the network. So we don't use it. We will use it to know what should be set up on the transformer. The next part of course, the voltage of the transformer, and using this communication and with the analysis of the current of each feeder, we can prefer the optimal set point for the transformer in the current situation of the network. So I think it will be really improve the voltage in the network. Then we can typical standard one on the transformer, but we don't know that it could be not enough for the especially big photovoltaic generations. So the next step is photovoltaic inverters of the customers, prosumers. We'll try to set up the direct communication between the central controller and the prosumer inverters, and using the Sunspec protocol, changing the set points of the inverter and reduce the production of the inverters. Of course, in the test will be the acceptation of the customers, but in the future, we will thinking about the bilateral contracts with these prosumers who can can allow us to control the inverters, that we can pay him for the reducing the power. Of course, it's the future, because the law in the Poland is not prepared at this moment. We couldn't do it, anything, but we can test, we can prepare everything for working with this. As I said, Pedro, earlier, yesterday we have meeting with the customers, and for this moment we have few, I think 6 or 10. At this moment we have the 6 customers. I think that will be 10 or more. So they agree to use. We have acceptation for these customers to be in the project. So that's the good news. So what we can locate this our flex station. The pole flex station will be located in rural areas of the Wejherowo and Ostrów Wielkopolski. It was on the Gdańsk division branch and Kalisz branch of our company. And the indoor flex station will be located in Mława, and this is very important special place, because it's the estate of terraced houses, as we can see on the photo. Every house is equipped with the photovoltaic and the heat pump. So there is almost 400 kilowatt on this one street. So with a big concentration, and cause a lot of problems. And this is the first step that is the most important for our problem, and we try to do it in this way. So this is everything about the concept of flex station. Next step is dynamic rating. If you have questions, then I can ask Adam to continue the demo.
Okay, thank you, Miroslav.
Okay, let's start. Can I take over the screen for the presentation?
Okay, I wish you want to play.
Yeah, I try to do it from my computer,
Okay.
my screen, Miroslav.
I will.
Release it.
Okay. Okay, you can do it.
Adam, I ask you to do a quick presentation. We are on time, so.
Yeah, so I prepared
Okay, thank you.
4 slides. So if you allocated me 5 minutes, that will be enough. Can I use this 5 minutes, Mario?
Yes. We have another presentation, so.
Okay, so that's also my screen. I hope that you see everybody. And I said I work for the Institute of Power Engineering in Polish Institute Energetyki. Therefore, the name is IEN. As Miroslav said, that is an example how DSO can earn money instead of spending or losing the money for buying the flexibility services. So I concentrate not on that. What is the dynamic load capacity of the line? Is the permissible load capacity resulting from the line structure and changing the time, mostly this construction of the line, also how is where it's located, and changing weather conditions, either in the real time or in this case the forecasted weather conditions. In contrary to the static load capacity, which is calculated and is taken as a constant for specific season or months, sometimes adjusted to the current or forecasted outside temperature. And then I try to explain how it is calculated, and in the end I present how it is metered DLR spread out in the Polish power sector. The permissible line current is calculated using the heat balance equation, which is here, and with the temperature being the limiting value. This temperature, in turn, is responsible for permissible sag of the wire and thus for maintaining the normative distance between the wire and the ground in each span of the line. In normal cases, 110 kV, this distance to the ground is 5.74 meters. As a balance, that means the should be balanced between heating, which is in a red color, and the cooling, which is a blue color. The heating is a heating from the Joule heating, which from the current flowing through the wire, from solar heating, irradiation, and cooling is from radiation and convections. That is here. Of course, in this equation, there are some coefficients and constants which are typical for this very wire span and so on. Therefore, for example, TS, that means a temperature of surface of the wire, which is the limiting factor, which is a simple way corresponding to the sag of the wire in this very span. This model is according to this SIGRE recommendation, and using this for all the span in all the lines, the admissible load profiles for the lines can be calculated. That is the result of this calculation. In this case, that is a forecasting on the basis of the weather, which can be obtained. It is our case, it's obtained from the external supplier. The forecast line current or power or capacity, whatever we call it, is calculated. The screen shows 24 hours. In our case, it is 74 hours ahead. And in the green, you see the static line current. That is the case when this dynamic line current is higher, but it's not always the same case. Sometimes the forecasted line current can be lower than the static line current, and especially in the spring season and autumn, it happens. On the low of this scheme, you see the ambient temperature, wind speed, which is also the forecasted, and then in real, it is measured. That is the example of the supervision of the system, or how it is managed in Poland. I try to explain or present that is the system, there's a DRR system as well spread in Poland. During the, let's say, 10 years, we have equipped all the 4 major DSO in Poland and also TSO with this system, and total amount of the high voltage line is exceeded 1,000 of the lines, and all of the total number of the weather station exceeds 500. So this is pretty enough, and for the time being, that's this critical line, critical span, which are selected for the supervision, are monitored, and within the scope of the universal project, 22 lines are specified, and for this very line, which are located in the vicinity of the production, the wind farms, which can be this, let's say, bottleneck with the leading out the power from the wind farm. This 22 lines would be, the capacity will be forecasted, taken into calculation of the power flow, and finally, it will be assessed either the additional power can be generated by the wind farm or not. And that will be this flexibility service, which can be sold or offered to this wind farm producers. And the last remark is that the last point I remember, since we are in the April meeting, so the first implementation some 20 years ago, there was implemented on the 2 poles, high voltage line poles, the tension measurement sensor, which was devoted for the maximum current estimation. That is some maybe interesting point for the colleagues from April. That's it from my side. That I'd like to conclude my presentation. I hope that I don't exaggerate your patience.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. It is an interesting, different view in which the distribution system operator sells flexibility to the wind farm. So this is different. In other use cases, we see that distribution system operators are procuring flexibility services in the market. So it was an interesting view. So do we have a question? We are on time. If it is possible, please answer directly in the chat. And you can jump to the next presentation with Professor Andrew Keane from University College of Dublin. It's okay for you, Adam, to answer directly in the chat?
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Professor Andrew, please go ahead. You can share your screen.
Hi, Mario. Good morning. Yeah.
We are on time. Sorry, but
that's okay. No. Thank you very much for having me speak this morning. I'm just sharing my screen now, which hopefully. Are you seeing that in presentation mode or?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
No, you need to change. You are.
Just a moment. How about now? Is that better?
No, it's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks, Mario. Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for having me speak this morning. I'm Andrew Keane, Director of the Energy Institute at University College Dublin. My presentation is quite high level this morning. I'm going to give an introduction and overview of a major new research program, industry academic collaboration that we just kicked off here in Dublin in January of this year. And in terms of what we do, so I'm an electrical power systems engineer. That's the work I do, of course, but the work of the institute and the work of the program Nexus that I'll talk about is very much multi and interdisciplinary. And this slide here is just to give an indication of the range of disciplines that are involved in the work that we do. The work we do is very much focused on decarbonization of the energy system, the transition to net zero carbon energy systems. And I guess our view, and I think it's reflected in reality, is that does require, not just a single discipline, but also requires industry, academic and government action. And that's kind of the approach we're trying to take in our work. Just a little bit on Ireland, and happy to have EPRI Europe based just off campus here in UCD in Dublin. Ireland, as everyone knows, I'm sure, small island on the western edge of Europe, limited DC interconnection. We just have 2 DC interconnectors into Great Britain at the moment. There's more planned into France and indeed more into Britain, but nonetheless, both of them are DC. So we are a single synchronous system. So we have to manage our own affairs from an electrical perspective, and we're operating at times, and indeed very recently, up to 75% instantaneous wind penetration on the system. So the issues of low inertia power systems are ones that we've seen in Ireland over many years, and we're kind of the work of the TSO, the DSO, and everyone in the energy sector in Ireland, I think, in the electricity sector is at the leading edge of what's technically possible in terms of running a secure and stable grid. That's the kind of context for a lot of the work we do. Obviously, it's not just about electricity, but to move now to the program that I want to talk about, Nexus, as it's called, Next Generation Energy Systems. So this is a research program. So, it's work, its bread and butter is producing PhD students, funding postdoctoral researchers to carry out their research, often though with a clear industry collaboration and partnership aspect to it. In terms of scale, 16 million euro 5-year program, of which we're 3 months in, so I don't have a lot of results to present this morning. But of course, this is building on previous work here at UCD and with our partners over several years. Of note, and maybe just to add, I think is an important note, is that while it's led here from Dublin, from UCD, it has a number of university partners from around the whole island, right around the island, in fact, and notably, I think it's an all-island collaboration. So we're delighted to have Ulster University and Queen's University Belfast as full academic partners in the programme. So for us, and I think for everyone, it's a really positive step, and it was a first of its kind. I think we were the first to do it. Others are now following, so I'll have to change the slide quite quickly, I think, but I guess we were first, so maybe I can keep it. But it's important to note that. So as I say, I'm an electrical engineer. We have academics, and UCD, just to mention, is a general university, so that the university here does pretty much everything that a university could do in terms of disciplines: veterinary, medicine, health sciences, obviously all the sciences and engineering, humanities, economics, business. I won't go into all of it. But it is also really helpful because it allows us, I think, to develop programs of research, which, while they are rooted very much in engineering, I would say, oftentimes, we're able to collaborate and cooperate very usefully with other disciplines and other academics. And that multi and interdisciplinary work, which gets talked about a lot, is tricky. It's a lot of overhead in terms of learning the language of other disciplines, but our experience here in Ireland has been that it's really worthwhile, and genuine, deep new insights can be revealed when you take the time and effort to work very closely with others. Examples will be with our colleagues in energy economics, also colleagues in social sciences, where colleagues are doing work looking at the energy transition in terms of the just transition and working with communities on the ground in Ireland in terms of how they view the energy transition, how they will be impacted. And as we'll be aware, there are often very real impacts. One of the ones of note in Ireland to date has been the closure of existing fossil fuel plants that were hubs of communities, major local employers, and that are now shut down as they need to be as part of the transition. But there is a very kind of clear knock-on human impact of that. And it's important that the work we do as engineers and as a community kind of captures that, and actually we can maybe work to achieve a true just transition. Industry is a big piece of what we do here in Nexus and at UCD, and you'll see on the outer circle of this slide here the co-funding partners. So these partners aren't funding the total package, but they are significant contributors to the funding. Of course, EPRI, we're very happy to say, are one of those co-funding partners. But among the grouping there, you'll maybe recognize some of the logos. With the Irish TSO and the Irish DSO, we also have companies such as SSE or WE. We have the gas network operator in Ireland. We have Atlantic Hub, who are a data center operator and developer, and data centers are a big component of our electricity demand in Ireland. So we've been very successful at attracting and hosting data centers in Ireland, and we're now seeing the knock-on impacts of that in terms of our electricity demand. I don't know if there's colleagues from Margaret here, but we're looking at up to and developing towards 30% of our national electricity demand coming from data centers in the coming years, and it's already quite significant. And that's posing challenges, let's say, or will continue to pose challenges. We're very lucky to have a philanthropic donor, and then on the inner section of that diagram there, you'll see, I won't go into all these collaborators, but just to highlight that there are a broad and diverse range of industry collaborators. So really the message I'm trying to deliver in the short presentation here is one of cooperation and collaboration, and that it's necessary in terms of, as you're trying to define and map out a pathway to a net zero carbon energy system, that we go in depth in domains. My own areas in distribution networks. I'm interested to listen to some of the earlier presentations, but also that we need to kind of bring in all stakeholders on that transition. To get maybe into at least at a high level, the nuts and bolts of the program structure, like at its core and at its center, as indicated there, is the energy system. energy system, very much representing the grid and power systems, but also reflecting the gas network and gas infrastructure. And a lot of the work we've done in recent years has looked at the interaction and interdependency between electricity and gas. And natural gas, of course, which will remain important for our energy security, notwithstanding, of course, significant unfortunate developments. So, and that's an understatement, let's say. But also opportunities in green hydrogen and hydrogen production, and understanding the role that hydrogen can play in the energy transition. We're on an electrification track here in Ireland very much in terms of heat and transport, as I think are many other European countries. But of course, as we know, there are sectors where electrification won't be sufficient or won't be able to carry the day: heavy industry, aviation, and so on. Which tees up very nicely, I think, that the 4 circles on the outer ring of the program here. Transport being obviously a major sector of energy, or major proportion of our energy demand and all our energy demands, but one that is really still very closely linked and tied to oil, and one where there's significant progress to be made. We're bringing together transport researchers with engineers like myself to work together on this. Water is there obviously as a vital natural resource, also as a significant component of energy demand in terms of wastewater treatment. And again, a lot of our previous work has looked at wastewater treatment plants as a potential source of flexibility. We've heard a lot about flexibility this morning on system and in the power system. So we're looking at that from an efficiency perspective, and we're dealing with academics who are expert in wastewater treatment, but also, for example, representing and developing models of wastewater treatment plants in production cost model settings. Using the main model we used previously was Backbone, which some of you may be familiar with, but also now Spine, which was a Horizon 2020 project, which we were working with KTH and VTT and other partners around Europe on. Offshore wind is another strand, very important for Ireland, given that we're an island and the resource that we have, and critical in terms of the achievement of our 2030 climate targets, but also a significant resource for us into the future, particularly as floating offshore wind matures and develops in our waters. We have a very significant resource to be utilized and developed. And cities and communities is building on some of that work I spoke about in terms of the just transition, also bringing that local energy network flexibility piece together. Also, I guess, a smart cities dimension to it in terms of sensor deployment, data analytics being brought to bear. Now, in one slide, I've summarized a lot of work very, very quickly. I won't go into too much more detail than that in the interest of time, perhaps, but just to maybe put up quickly some slides to highlight some of the topics, and particularly on this slide, some headline topics that I think will be familiar to this audience in particular. So we're looking at power system in terms of scheduling and production, also in terms of adequacy, understanding the role in developing market models and the various different market models, and the transition towards near or real-time markets is an important piece of that in terms of accessing flexibility. Also power system dynamics and stability, understanding grid forming inverters. I should probably mention them. They get mentioned at every presentation, and I don't mean to trivialize that, but as you would expect, inverter-based resources are very much central to a lot of the work that we'll be doing. Hydrogen I've talked about, but also maybe just to mention at the bottom of the slide here, in terms of that, we're seeking to assess, I guess, the macroeconomic impact of the energy transition, and also trying to understand future energy users from a behavioral perspective rather than just from a technology perspective. The Spine model, which I mentioned just previously quite briefly, so this was a Horizon 2020 project, which we very recently we're working on, and it developed from the Backbone model, which some people may be familiar with. A lot of it developed by VTT, KTH, and the partners here, along with ourselves. And this, I think, will be the central modeling platform, let's say, for those higher level scenarios in terms of unit equipment and production cost modeling that we'll be seeking to develop. Cities and communities, again, I won't go into too much more detail, just maybe to throw up the slides so people can I'm happy to share the slides afterwards, but highlighting also, I think heat is something that I haven't mentioned yet, and that's also very much embedded within this strand, being the other third major leg of the energy stool that we have. Transport, I think I probably mentioned about, but again, bringing it from a transport and infrastructure perspective, and not just being about electric vehicles, also looking at multi-mode transport and micromobility, and understanding that, again, bringing that behavioral piece, which again, the multi and interdisciplinary approach we take really enables the tackling of some of these questions and the knitting together of some of these strands. Water, I think I talked about already. Offshore wind. And in offshore wind, we're bringing a mechanical engineering perspective. So as you can see here, looking at dynamic rope models, structural health monitoring, developing digital twins of models of the actual systems of the offshore wind, but also on the bottom point here, where my own personal interest would lie, in terms of developing interconnected offshore grids and understanding the broader pan-European interconnected system to be developed. So I think perhaps my vision of the future is Ireland being less isolated electrically into the future, and I think that's something that will happen. But equally, there's an interesting element of work as we transition away from gas and oil in terms of electricity to actually how can we actually harness and ensure energy security through robust infrastructure, but harvesting the renewables where they can be found. And if we look to the future, it's floating offshore wind, deep water terrain. It's more geographically distant. So there is a interesting, I think, body of work to be developed both at the inverter level, let's say, but also in the energy transportation piece that goes with that. And finally, I just did want to mention our joint lab that we have with EPRI here, based on the campus here in Dublin, the Integrated Energy Lab. We established it a number of years ago. I guess it was basically closed for much of the COVID pandemic, although we did keep some activity going. Within that lab, it's a multi-energy lab, so we have a temperature controlled room. We also have gas supply. We're doing work with GNI on gas networks, looking at the blending of hydrogen into natural gas networks. We have real-time simulation, OPAL-RT, as you would expect. And also, one of the major developments we've done recently is to work with a company called DoTrain, based in Germany, who do control center training, let's say, for control center operators, where we developed Irish grid model, basically a replica of the Irish National Control Center. So we can actually, from an education perspective, really actually to date, to work with our students and have them working with the Irish grid as if they were in the NCC in EirGrid. But also we think there's significant opportunity into the future to look at knitting together or interconnecting systems like that with the EPRI Spider DERMS model and other models that we have on site as well. So that whole of systems management piece, which I think would very much be relevant to some of the earlier work that we've heard about this morning. So very finally, just to mention, I've talked a lot about Ireland, and this is an Irish, I guess, funded program by Science Foundation Ireland and a number of energy players here in Ireland and internationally. Of course, we're very active in previously Horizon 2020, now in Horizon Europe, members of ERA joint program in smart grids, also joint program in energy systems integration. And our lab is a member of their lab as well. So we work, I'm very happy to work with others and people present here as we take forward Nexus. So hopefully next time I'll be able to present some results. But I guess the idea this morning was just to, and thank you for the opportunity indeed to introduce Nexus. So Mario, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. I know we are after the time, so I will end the session just with some remarks. I will share again my screen to end this session.
You're doing that. I'll just say thanks to Andy for going through Nexus. We're really excited about being part of the development of the DER integration lab there, and bringing some of our technology from our labs in the US around DERMS testing and interfaces to the actual DER devices. It's a very exciting project.
Yes, thank you for the nice presentation. Just to give to the audience some remarks about what HAPRI is developing. I would like to use some more minutes talking about the FERC order, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. It is an order that enables the participation of DR and DR aggregation into the wholesale market. So this is very similar to what we have discussed today about the Onenet project and Universal project, but in the perspective of wholesale market integration. So this is the same type of problems. I will not use your time talking about this, but this is very similar. The same questions about key elements of coordination. What is the DR aggregation eligibility requirements? So the participation models, coordination, aggregation management. So this is the same topics. This is something that HAPRI developed last year, involving different research areas, grid operations planning, DR integration, information, and communications, energy utilization. So this is a project with different work streams. We have a lot of deliverables, including wholesale market operation, distribution reliability, safety. So a lot of deliverables about this work developed by HAPRI, more focused on the North American perspective. If you have interest, I can share with you this report about the FERC 2222. This is a free report. I will give the link in this in the web chat. And the next step it's a new project. As the next step of the FERC will design this project is not restricted to the North American distribution utilities, but also to European distribution system operators. So how we can support the distribution system operator to go from the demonstrators to effective DSOs. So this is a significant challenge for the distribution utilities to be prepared to integrate a lot of DRs into the distribution system. We have distinct visions around the world. It depends on the regulation and policy initiatives. So this is a project that we'll have this year with two approaches: the strategic roadmap, helping the DSOs to define objectives and capabilities, and conduct current state and gap assessment, create roadmaps to desired end state. This is our first approach. We call strategic roadmap. We have a second approach regarding tactical implementation plans to define high priority system improvements projects, document functional requirements of components, identify applicable standards for NACTEC change. So we are trying to develop collaborative environments where distribution utilities can work together to define not only the rules, but identify the tools, the process, involving different areas from the real-time operation, planning, NACTEC change, IT and IT infrastructure, or we can have tailored process for the company. So if you have interest to talk about this project in more detail, please feel free to contact us. This is something that we'll have in the coming months, so we can have some conversation about this project. So this is a quick overview about this new project that could be interested for European utilities. So more information about the project we can provide to the electric utilities if you are interested to integrate this project. Well, just to end this session, just to remember that this afternoon we have two more sessions about innovation strategy discussion and the startup sessions and the session about the system inertia providers and the grid forming inverters. And tomorrow we'll have more sessions, so please feel free to join us. Just to end this session, I would like to say thank you very much for joining the European workshop. I appreciate the collaboration from of the speakers, and I hope you have enjoyed this session. I think we had a lot of good inputs about the Horizon Europe projects addressing the DSO cooperation, flexibility markets, and DR integration. So thank you very much for your time and to be part of this session. Thank you.
Good job, Mario. Thanks, everyone.